Good evening and thanks for staying with ANN7 Prime. Now, former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe's 30 million rand pension calculation was according to the rules, but Eskom may have misled the pension fund over his contract. Officials from Eskom's Pension and Provident Fund were at the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises on day 3 of its probe into Eskom. The CEO of EPPF says that they were made to believe that Molefe was a permanent employee when in fact he was on a 5-year contract. And this is important as only permanent employees are eligible to be members of the pension fund.
Had we been aware at that point that he was not a permanent employee, we would have then indicated to them that he cannot be a member of the fund. At different days and different times, there were these requests that came through via email to say, now calculate what happens from the age of 55, what happens at the age of 63. And all of this took place around about November 2015. We were put under pressure as the fund to say, we need this information urgently because it was saying that calculate these numbers as the information is required to finalize the issue with the minister.
And former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe took an early retirement from the power utility effective as of the 1st of January 2017. His exit and subsequent 30 million rand pension payout created a lot of controversy. The CEO of the Eskom Pension Fund was at pains to explain how they arrived at this figure.
The legal advice or the legal opinion that the fund received was that actually Rule 28.1 read with Rule 28.3 qualified Molefe to be retired from the fund. So the fund had correctly retired Mr. Molefe in terms of those rules, and also looking at Rule 21.4, which permitted the employer to buy additional service.
Mr. Molefe is not involved personally in this transaction. That this is an interaction taking place between Eskom, represented by the board, and the pension fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, at this point when these were calculated, the process is triggered by Eskom as the employer.
So here's what we know about Brian Molefe's payout. The 30 million rand figure includes spousal benefits and Eskom buying out 13 years of additional service for Molefe. And Brian Molefe received 9.7 million rand in cash from Eskom's Pension and Provident Fund. And Molefe also received 111,000 rand per month in monthly pension payments. And Brian Molefe has until November 2017 to pay back payout received from the pension fund. And it is also only meant for permanent employees. As a contractual employee, Molefe was not eligible to be a member of the pension fund.
Thank you very much, honorable members, and thank you for the response and the presentation from the Eskom Pension Fund. We might not have understood some of the information, or we might not have agreed on the information, but we have the information. Then we will work on that information when we get to call Eskom itself. But I just wanted to caution the members or the board to just look again at your rules and check what you have learned out of this process and out of the process that you were involved in with Eskom. And maybe there are things that you need to change.
As a board, we decided that we are going to revisit the rules. We are also going to ensure that discretion is not delegated. All such decisions come back to us as a board, and we'll make a ruling. We would have probably have asked the questions, why such a short period or whatever. Unfortunately, we admit that we did not ask those questions, and also the discretion, our discretion, we could not exercise our discretion at that point. As a new board, things had been happening, and many executives had been paid in the past.
Joining us in studio, Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, and Zamu Madlala, president of the Radical Economic Transformation Council. Good evening to you, and thanks so much, Re Khadima, Mr. Chair, for your time. It seems that Brian Molefe's woes are not entirely over.
Well, as they say, the plot thickens. But I think one of the things that is absolutely puzzling, and in terms of the diligence of our parliamentarians. For starters, it's beyond me, and I think anybody else who at least would have taken time to go to the Pretoria High Court or the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, because it's common cause that Mr. Molefe is, as we speak, in court with Solidarity and the rest of the Eskom board members, previous and current board members. So the matter is in court. What is astonishing is that Parliament did not take 1 minute to simply go and look into the file and understand that the matter is in any case before court. Therefore, they should not have been leading testimony in Parliament today as they did, as this matter is subject to the ruling by the court, which they should have respected. So here we have a clear case where our lawmakers are in contempt of court. The matter is before court. But be that as it may, if they had taken 1 minute just to really obtain the copy of the papers deposed in the High Court in Pretoria, they would have known that. They would have at least got to know about the circumstances that led to Mr. Brian Molefe being converted from a permanent employee into a contractual employee on a 5-year term. And then also that, in fact, when that happened, it happened almost 5 to 6 months after he had been a permanent employee. And that all his predecessors at Eskom, all the other CEOs, they were not on a contract. They were members of the pension fund because they would have been permanent employees of the enterprise. And also taking into account that when he was at Transnet, he was a member of a pension fund. So upon his leaving his employment at Transnet to go to Eskom, he would have, you would understand, he would have transferred his pension thereof to Eskom. All of these factors are deposed in the court file. Why had they not taken time to do that? Unless otherwise there is malicious intent to only harm Mr. Molefe. Also, what is puzzling is that he's not even on the witness list of the people that have been subpoenaed to lead testimony, to assist the inquiry. And also, we don't even know what is the end game. What exactly is this inquiry that has been established? What does it seek to establish? Because, amongst many things, there is so much more that they have left out. So they have cherry-picked, and the cherry-picking of witnesses can only lead to one thing, that they have got a predetermined outcome that they want to legitimize through Parliament, and that is an egregious abuse of power by Parliament, which must not be allowed under any circumstances. But how can they lead discussion and lead testimony on a matter that is before court is beyond me.
Zamo, thank you so much for joining us. Zamo Madlala is with the Radical Economic Transformation Council. Good evening to you and thanks for joining us. Are you also of the view that there is a certain level of a witch hunt and to vilify Mr. Molefe?
Good evening, Cindy, and to the viewers. Well, our opinion, quite frankly, is that I must really totally agree with Tsepo in terms of I was really intrigued as to how Parliament was running a process that is exactly parallel to what is happening at court, right? When the court case eventually sits, they're going to have to go through all of this. And even the poor CEO from the pension fund was saying that ultimately, in terms of reversals and all of that, they would need a court order because the pension fund can't actually determine all of these things. And he was quite clear and coherent in explaining how the whole thing came about, even though everyone was trying to make it difficult to understand how the pension fund got to 30.1 million. That's really a question that's going to ultimately end up sitting in front of the board, because it's a board that arrived at a decision on what Brian Molefe was entitled to. So I don't really, I will also agree with Tsepo with regard to saying, what is the end game? What is the point? It appears as though there is some sort of sinister idea in mind. When you look at even how the entire inquiry came about, it came off a report that was written by some university specialists that are funded by whoever with whatever in mind. If we are actually being honest, then the same ought to apply to SAA and all the other SOEs, if that's what this is all about. If it's about, we are really trying to look at governance at all our state-owned entities and not to cherry-pick everything that generally we sense the Zuma Gupta link here, once again. This is just about, we're going to witch hunt, go and see, is this another Gupta thing? And now it appears as though Mr. Molefe himself is being targeted, although there's still a court process that must still play itself out.
Yeah, Mr. Mandela, please stay on the line. Just the bone of contention, is it about the conversion of Mr. Molefe's contract from permanent to 5 years and also the payment in advance of his 13-year service?
You know, Cindy, I've been on record taking issue with the unlawful interference by the African National Congress, specifically the National Executive Committee, as well as Cabinet. The circumstances that have led us this far, if we recall, is because there was somebody who in the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress thought that they should push a motion through, which they did do, which unlawfully instructed the minister to unlawfully instruct the board of Eskom to convert Mr. Brian Molefe's employment, permanent employment, into a 5-year contractual employment. That was not as originally envisaged by the parties, in this case being Mr. Molefe as well as Eskom. And all of these facts are deposed in an affidavit in court. How is it possible that the people that were leading testimony, as well as the parliamentarians, if we are to take that their inquiry have got some merit and it is to be legitimate, how can they be so sloppy and not have taken just a moment to go and read the facts? So the conversion itself, again, it shows about the lapses in governance of state-owned companies, because it was never the privilege of Cabinet, it was never the privilege of the minister to have then instructed the board of Eskom to have converted an existing employment contract in the circumstance that they did. Because when that issue arose, that his employment now, they intended or they required that it be converted to a 5-year contract, the question, it would appear that then had to be addressed was, well, what then do you do? Because at that time, when they converted in March of 2016, when Mr. Molefe's contract was converted to a 5-year contract from permanent employment, already he was a member of the Eskom Pension and Provident Fund. So the issue becomes, well, it's not like before he became a member, and it's also incorrect, factually incorrect, by the CEO of the pension fund to have led testimony that they were misinformed by Eskom, because Mr. Molefe became a member of the Eskom Provident and Pension Fund as early as November of 2015. So by 2016, when they converted his employment and then justified that they will do it under Rule 28 of the pension fund rules consent, they had taken legal advice, and therefore there was nothing untoward. We also know that the reversal came as a result of, once again, unlawful interference. And this is at the core of the problems that we are dealing with here. But Parliament, unfortunately, in this case, with this inquiry, which has got a predetermined outcome, and they are going to have a difficult task to prove that they have not got a predetermined outcome in the manner they conduct themselves, it leaves a lot to be desired of our parliamentarians.
All right, Tsepo, as always, lovely having you. Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, Zamo Madlala, president of the Radical Economic Transformation Council, joining us on the phone line, looking at the day 3 of the parliamentary submissions with regards to Eskom, and this time around looking at the contractual obligations on Eskom to pay out 30 million rand to Mr. Brian Molefe. That matter is before court and will follow the proceedings as they progress.